Of my videos have tried to promote other autistic creators who are people of color, like Dr. C, as well as Sarah, who commented on Dr. C's video. But in general, this is something that I noticed at the very beginning during my research before I got my official diagnosis as an issue within the autistic community. So it's one thing that when I started to research into autism and started to really consider myself autistic before I got diagnosed, it was very apparent to me that the only women that I could find who were speaking about autism were white. And I've mentioned before, it's not wrong or right that we see them prevalent and that they're speaking and talking about our community and showing more of the different representations of how autism can present itself in women. But it is very different, and it doesn't give the whole spectrum, right, of our community and how autism is presented in women, and especially people of color, women and men. And I think a lot of this has to deal with something called intersectionality. So if you're not familiar with intersectionality, it's basically a definition and term that is coined to talk about our different identities, different experiences, and how they shape our perceptions of ourselves, but also specifically how society perceives us. This is going to be important for autistic communities, especially when we get into more mental health and understanding about autism in general and how it presents itself in different communities and different races and genders, is that when it comes to different communities like Asian communities, Black communities, Hispanic communities, how we are raised in those communities and how our families think about mental health is very, very different than white communities. And in most cases, I think for most minority communities, because we're more focused on trying to get by, trying to get food on the table, trying to make sure that we're not being discriminated against, or trying to allow ourselves to get access to resources that most white communities have access to, thinking we're autistic or looking into autism is the last thing that we're going to look into. And in most cases, especially if you're like myself, who comes from a background of immigrant parents, this is not something that is going to be spoken about nor suggested to an immigrant family. And when it came to mental health in general for my family, we do have other people who have other mental disorders, even in my immediate family, but that was never considered. It was always more considered of like, you're not trying hard enough, you're lazy, there's something wrong with you specifically, and not that that you might have a disorder or something else going on. So that's something really to consider, because then in other communities who are trying to assess us, trying to perceive us, instead of looking into other things that could be, even though it presents very obvious that there's like autism or other disorders that could happen, it's really not considered because we don't have that representation in the community. Like for me, and I think most people, right, only thought autistic people looked a certain way. And because now we are only shifting the narrative and view and perception of autism to be autistic white women, it's going to be harder again for other people of color or people like myself to consider or look into the possibility that somebody might be autistic or that their child might be autistic if we don't have that representation already within our community. So one way that I am trying to promote and trying to hopefully raise more autistic people of color creators or neurodivergent creators is by specifically looking for that type of creator in my TikTok, in my social media, in the things that I consume content-wise. Because everything is based off an algorithm, but our algorithms are based off of things that we actually look into and that we actually take the time to type in and try to research for. So if you're not researching for the things that are going against or go differently than what you normally search, it's not going to bring you those different creators, those different content that you're probably open to, but you just won't be able to see because the algorithm's not going to show you. And everything when it comes to media, and social media specifically, it'll only show you the people that are the most popular or that have the most views, because that allows it to generate the things that's the easiest things for you to access. But finding things and spreading more awareness, having more representation is not easy. You have to look out for those things. You have to ask for them, and you have to, in a way, demand that our community finds more representation.